So I've been in corporate functions and startups, scale-ups, and now back to corporate. Before starting at CBRE as country lead with all TA in Denmark, I was heading up the EMEA and APAC team, global team in Vault, our support team. We were 8 team members and oversaw about 250 hires a year. 2,500 hires a year. So a lot of volume recruiting and a lot of AI technology in there. In my current position, way less. We have about 20 open positions. So, and as it is corporate, not really that much of a technological approach to it. It's more like hands-on, old school recruiting.
No, awesome. Andy, yourself?
Yeah, so I fell into recruitment like everyone does. Spent about 12, 13 years in agency before going in-house, and my in-house journey's taken big corporate leadership roles, and then kind of a step into growth tech, fintech in the last 12 months or so, and smaller teams. So far more hands-on again. So I've got a team of 5, 6, including my own role at Zopa Bank, and we'll deliver probably 250 hires this year. But in the past, I've managed teams up to 150, delivering kind of 9,000 hires in EMEA. So yeah, I think it's interesting because in-house experience can really take you in so many different directions.
I think that is the beauty of it. Although internal recruitment can sound similar in a lot of ways, the roles can be so heavily different. So yeah, to be honest, I just wanted to dive straight in maybe with kind of the market as a whole. I don't know if you guys have recruited for your own teams in terms of hiring recruiters at the minute, but obviously we see a lot at the minute across LinkedIn and the news about redundancies, and kind of is sort of at the forefront of people's mind. How have you find it sort of hiring for your own teams? If you are, have you found that there are a lot more recruiters available now? I know that at one point it was really tough to kind of find them, but I don't know how either of you have found that.
So my last experience of hiring a recruiter was about 2-3 months ago. And I sensed as we were going through that process, just a bit of a change in the market. So we were just starting to see expectations reducing a little bit. I guess candidates come into the market a bit more realistic about what they might be able to achieve salary-wise. And for the first time ever, someone came to me and we spoke in a phone screen, and she said, look, I recognize that I've been, I've made a move. I'm overpaid for what I'm delivering. And actually I would take a step back salary wise to get myself into a more solid position. And that's the first time I've ever heard a recruiter say that they would actively take less money rather than more. So, so I think, I was starting to see candidates acknowledge the market was tightening up, and that they might need to be a little bit more flexible. But I've definitely over the last kind of 12 to 18 months just been amazed by the salaries that are being thrown around and requested for the level of experience that people have. And I think that's a common thing. I'm not saying anything that's wildly kind of off the wall, but I definitely think there's a lot of people in our profession who have done very well over the last 12 to 18 months, given the market challenges, and kind of expectation on people to deliver in role is very high. And I don't necessarily think everyone is set up for success, having that solid grounding in perhaps a combination of agency, RPO, and in-house roles, things like that. So yeah, definitely started to see a bit of a change.
Completely agree. And taking just another view at it, especially in Nordics and Germany, where I've been working, I can see it's like, how do you put it in English? Like the low-level recruiters, the ones that maybe don't have the experience, don't have the educational background, maybe worked in sales. Like I see a lot of shift there. Like the high-level recruiters, the more experienced recruiters, I see them shift, but not a lot. And that's more or less when like you get a good paycheck, it's the competitor you leave for. But especially when it comes to like low-level, entry-level, should say, recruiters, especially in Denmark. Actually, now you can see a lot of people being laid off, not because there's no need for the role, but actually because they took the candidate on because they could just fill one position a month. That would be better than none. And can actually see now, okay, there's just a new breed of people that done with the business schools and such this summer, of being done this winter, that actually comes in and takes over. So you can see that shift now, that okay, unemployed, let's go agency, okay, been there for 6 months, let's try in-house, and that shift with that entry level position. So completely agree what you see saying, Andrew, but yeah, a lot of people moving around at the moment.
Yeah,
I think just one thing I'd add as well is I'm not seeing the tenure in people's backgrounds. I'm seeing people move every 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know as a recruiter, it takes you a while to get your feet under a desk, understand the business you're supporting, and actually deliver results. And I just always have this concern that, you know, if someone is moving every 6 to 12 months, they haven't got to a point that they're performing at expectation and then improving their own skill set and developing themselves personally before bouncing on to the next opportunity. So I think that's the other thing that stood out for me, is just the lack of tenure.
And that's an interesting point as well, I suppose, from your guys' point of view. Is that something that, you know, if you're looking at hiring someone for your team, someone that has jumped around a lot without that kind of previous experience, can that be a negative? Or, you know, what is it? You know, I know the tenure for recruiters probably, I don't know, it was probably 18 months, 2 years, a lot before, but it's probably getting less now. But seeing a recruiter do sort of 6 month stints and sort of bouncing around now, can that be seen as something as a negative for you guys when you're looking to hire? Or
depending on the role needed to fill, like in the start of my career, I bounced around. Like I pretty quickly found out that the agency wasn't for me. The way that's done, like hats off for you, Andrew, doing that many years. Like it's not for everybody, but it all depends on the situation. Like you can have recruiters just having the wrong manager, not being the right fit. It could be the wrong client, and it could be the wrong internal processes. Like there can be a lot of things like it. But if you come and see 4, 5, 6 jobs with that 6, 9, 12 months, then for me that would be a red flag. But like 2 or 3 in the start of your career, fair enough.
Yeah. I think to build on that, I think it does depend on the need you have. You know, for me at the time, you know, a couple of months back, I was looking to add someone to the team who was going to come and, you know, build with us. So it was a long-term hire. But I definitely recognize there are times when you need someone for 3 months, so 6 months, 12 months, and you need, you know, it's to fulfill a need rather than to kind of build for the future. So you need to kind of look at that slightly differently. I think just to kind of add, some of those individuals that we've seen in the market with less experience, they haven't had the foundation either in agency or, you know, perhaps RPO or something to give you confidence at times that actually recruitment is the career that they want to progress on. Now, I spent 12 years in agency, and I think with hindsight, I probably spent too long in agency. I could have left halfway through that and, you know, started to develop my in-house career earlier. You know, it was useful experience, but I guess, you know, when I'm seeing someone who spent, you know, 4 or 5 years, you know, in recruitment, that gives me confidence that they're going to spend the next 4 or 5 years in recruitment. If someone's coming in and they've perhaps, you know, spent 12 to 18 months somewhere and then bounced, and you know, that's one of the questions I'm asking. You know, trying to keep an open mind, because you're right. You know, it might just be a bad manager, it might be an underperforming business, and there's lots of reasons that could lead to people moving around. But I like to know that someone wants to be a recruiter.
No, that's a great point, to be fair. It is about getting balance, and obviously every circumstance is different. But if you know that they've had that foundation where they've kind of gone through the highs and the lows of recruitment and stuck it through, after that, if they do want to move around, then sometimes that can be a bonus as well, from seeing different processes and kind of that adaptability as well. So yeah, no, without a doubt, it is about a balance. It's interesting, you were just talking about the salaries and kind of people jumping around. Have you seen anything from the pandemic that's maybe there's been a slight shift in focus for recruiters. I know previously a lot of it was just purely about salary, and a lot of the attraction from agency to internal was the biggest salary. But have you seen anything that's changed there? Is it still just the salary and the numbers, or is it more about, you know, the working from home, the flexibility, the perks, benefits, all that kind of stuff now? Or is it still salary sort of, you know, top dog when it comes to that kind of thing?
I can, from my side, I can see on a personal level, like given 18 months back, completely salary, of course, like the job itself, but salary was a big part of it. Today, flexibility, hybrid model, being able to pick up my son in kindergarten and stuff like means much more than the extra figures on the paycheck. So that could just be me, the place I am in my life, but like I don't tend to see that it's like people who are serious about recruiting and actually want to have it as a career, that it's about getting £1,000 more a month. It's not that. It's a mix about like the freedom, the hybrid model, and actually see a lot of people actually going from corporate to scale up startup scene, especially fintech. Maybe it's just Copenhagen because we're known for being a tech capital, but a lot of people actually moving from corporate to the tech world.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've definitely, you know, I'm sure as for all roles that we hire, you know, candidates want to talk about working patterns and hybrid, you know, the degree of flexibility you can offer. So I think that, you know, absolutely, it's not necessarily as, you know, got equal weighting to salary, but it's definitely a factor that candidates are bringing into their decision-making process. I think when it comes to a wider benefits conversation, that tends to differ based on where the candidate is in their, you know, their kind of life, the point at which they're at. Because, you know, for me, a full benefits package is important. You know, healthcare, pension contributions, the full works, and I take all of that into account now. But I know members of my team wouldn't have the same focus necessarily on pension, for example. And you know, the kind of flexibility you get and kind of benefits you get through a Vitality healthcare program is of more interest to perhaps a more corporate Bupa program where it's purely just a health benefit rather than a kind of a well-being or a lifestyle benefit as well. But yeah, we're recruiters. You don't get far away from the salary being the you know, the primary focus.
Yeah. That is interesting because you do see a lot of on LinkedIn about how important it is to work from home now and the kind of the culture side of things. But when it comes to the actual crunch, when you're speaking to people that are hiring there and then, it still seems to be the deciding factor at the end of the day is the salary. So
I think the flexibility piece is, you know, we can go down a whole rabbit hole on that. I think it's great because it opens up the talent pool for us as leaders recruiting. You know, if you truly are flexible or can offer 100% remote, you know, you can essentially recruit anywhere rather than recruiting, you know, just tied to Copenhagen or to London or wherever. But the flip side of that, I found personally working for a business previously that was 100% remote, is you really do struggle to build the culture and the engagement. And so I think, you know, hybrid is kind of, if you can get it right and you can articulate it correctly to people and they can buy into that, is perfect, because you get that opportunity to tap into perhaps more geographically diverse talent pools, but you still get some degree of connection back to an office and a team culture, which I think we've lacked through the pandemic.
I think that stands in good stead as well, working with entry-level people, right? Because it's those guys that you need that contact with to be close enough to in order to train them and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's funny. I wanted to ask you as well, this might be a bit of a tricky question, I'm not sure. But with the, just because we are seeing some redundancies from some of the bigger players and that kind of stuff, I think speaking to a lot of recruiters, there's some small kind of fear factor in there now that if they want to go to a new role or look to go internal, there's that slight worry of, because obviously some businesses you see getting big rounds of funding, promoting that, and then a week later there's a few bodies going, right? So if I'm a recruiter now looking for a job, is there any kind of, I don't know, green flags you like, that I can look for in a business to kind of reassure me that that business is bringing me on for the long term and that they're in a stable place? Is it just an unknown and it's kind of a gamble as a candidate, or is there something that I can look at and say, no, do you know what? I know that business are going in the right direction. There's kind of no redundancies coming.
So definitely, having stepped out of a big corporate role into an insurtech at the time, and now moved into a kind of a true fintech, I would definitely say my eyes have opened quite widely to the difference between the two, and the potential difference in job security. So I think there's a huge opportunity and benefit and challenge and interest in startup, scale up, growth tech, fintech. But yeah, it does come with a risk, because hiring plans from year to year have more volatility than they will do in a big company where you're hiring 2.5, 3, 4, 5,000 a year, and there's always going to be a core of TA needed to deliver that.
Yeah.
But the upside is you've got a completely different journey to talk about and experience and be part of. So I think for me, quality of leadership in a business and looking at the how well a leadership team is formed and functions is quite a strong indicator for me of security. Understanding a bit more about how a business goes through headcount management and forecasting is quite telling on kind of their ability to forecast the next year into the next year. But I think in kind of the sector I'm in now, you have to accept a degree of volatility, and I think if you're really after job security, the larger corporate businesses are more likely to give you that year over year. So yeah, they're the kind of things I would add.
Yeah, like my mentor has a good saying: if you want job security in recruiting, join the public sector. Like that's the way to go. Then, like in fintech and even corporations, like job security, what is actually that? Because not only in TA but across the board in all functions, like what is job security? Like if one part of the business underperforms, well, it's going to have effect on all the other parts of the business. So yeah, it's so difficult to say what is actually job security in that way. But yeah, join the public sector if you want to be sure.
But there's an add-on to that, to the job security piece as well. I think I've worked with recruiters, and no fault to them, who see the value they bring in terms of the number of hires they deliver every year, and are solely focused on that. And I think that comes from the agency background that a lot of us have. But actually, looking beyond that, the value that you can bring as a recruiter in terms of talent management, in terms of process improvement, efficiency, data and insight to the business, supporting tying what you do directly back to business strategy and success in that area, I think helps to move the conversation on from worrying about your job security based on, well, I filled 50 roles last year, if I'm only filling 40 this year, does that mean I'm kind of I'm at risk? So making sure that the business understands the value that TA brings, I think, can really help.
No, I think that's brilliant advice, because I think it is that little bit of an unknown and that sort of stuff. But looking out for that is awesome. To talk about to go a little bit back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of agency recruitment. Obviously, both of you had a previous experience. I think we've seen it over the last 12 to 18 months. There's been a lot of movement from the agency side to internal. I'd love to know from your point of view, in terms of if you're looking to hire an agency recruiter into your internal team, what is there anything that you guys look for that gives you full confidence that that agency recruiter can come into the internal part of the game and succeed? Is there anything that you look for from an agency background or what they're doing that gives you that confidence to hire them and know that they'll be able to make that transition into internal recruitment well?
Like for me, and it's gonna sound very romantic and holistic, but for me, it's a personality. Like I don't really have the red thread saying like you have to have this project working on that kind of customer stuff. It's for me, it's the person I'm sat in front of. If they can convince me like that's the right step for them, then bring them on. But saying you have to have a large client, corporate client, or fintech client, like for me, I haven't seen a red thread with that. So it would be the person sat in front of me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's how they communicate, how they bring their story to the, to the table. There are a lot of recruiters that are very good recruiters and very good salespeople, and that's where I think if I can identify through an interview that they're more of a sales focused recruiter, then I think that's where a question mark is raised a little bit for me, whether they're going to make that transition into an in-house role and enjoy it. It's not just about, are they going to be right for me? It's whether it's the right move for them. Whereas I think if you recognize the value that you can bring and why you can bring more than just putting a bum on a seat to a client, you're starting to think about broader strategy. You're starting to think about the impact that you can have on a business's success and forward direction. That's when I think that you start to demonstrate an awareness of the breadth of experience that you can get in-house versus what's potentially a little bit narrower sometimes in agency. So yeah, I think it's definitely, I hate to say it's a bit of a gut feel sometimes, but I think it's the way someone carries themselves, but how they articulate their desire to make that move.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I think there are a lot of agency people out there that probably want to move over, and they're just a little bit unsure, kind of maybe for their reasons why, and how, I suppose they'll probably maybe feel that they're at the bottom of the pile if they're competing with someone else that's got internal experience before. I mean, does that have any weight of bearing on you guys in terms of, hey, look, they've worked internally before, they haven't? Does that give them any advantage at all, or is it pretty much like for like, and again, just personality and what they do?
Well, it does to some degree, of course, previous experience, but like for me, it wouldn't be the what's called in English, it wouldn't be the definitive factor, deciding factor. If let's say they have 6 months of internal recruitment, that or 12 months, that wouldn't be the deciding factor. Again, the person in front of me, I completely agree with Andy what he says. It's the way they articulate and like the way they come off. Completely agree with Andy.
Yeah, I think I've recruited very strong direct from agency recruiters who I just felt a lot of confidence in, a lot of buy-in to, who beat other recruiters with in-house experience to the role because they were just more credible, better able to articulate what they could bring to the role. So I think it comes back to the person. I think in-house experience gives you confidence that they understand the stakeholder management piece, the need to be able to navigate other processes outside of the recruitment process itself, and to think broader than just what am I doing. My role as a recruiter is just this bit, and really appreciate the full end-to-end recruitment process that is from requisition approval right through to the back end when you're getting into onboarding and that sort of thing. So it definitely carries weight if someone's got in-house experience, but I would happily hire someone straight from agency if I felt they were kind of more ready for the role.
That's interesting. And I
since we're all agreeing on the board, like we should have somebody disagrees with us. We would all agree on things.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. I got my head thinking about that point there, and about not just kind of going in and just focusing on placements, right, and just literally just having that tunnel vision. If is that the definitive factor as well? Like if I'm an agency recruiter, do I need to, is there room for them? Do you ever look to recruit someone and go, look, hey, he's just going to be, or she's just going to get us the people through the door? Is there room for that as well? Do you need a bit of a blend in the team, or is it someone you want to say, no, we need to be a bit more all-rounded here. We would need people that are looking to progress and go into other areas of it as well?
No, I've definitely gone to market wanting recruiters with agency experience, because I think, more so in previous bigger leadership roles where the volumes are higher, it's you need people that are you need recruiters that are used to working at pace, working at volume, and delivering. And I think the hunger, the focus, working to targets, KPIs, that background is really important. So You know, I like to see agency experience on a CV. You know, it's perhaps a little different, the company I'm with now, because I think it's a slightly hesitant to use the word softer environment, but it's kind of it's not as brutal in terms of, you know, KPIs and targets. You know, we are working as hard as we can to deliver, you know, the best quality hires into the business, but it's more driven on quality. Let's take the word soft out. It's quality driven, rather than volume driven.
No, that's awesome. It's which might be leading on to something else actually, which, because having a recent conversation this week between with someone who's they're actually looking to branch out into a new territory, new country, and that kind of stuff, and are looking to make their first hires in terms of recruiters for their teams. And we were talking about the kind of not dilemma, I suppose, but what's best for them in terms of, do they just look for the best recruiter, for example? Would they rather just the best recruiter with kind of no network and no previous, or your average recruiter, so to speak, but who has got that huge network already there? Is there a preference for you guys when you're looking at something like that? Does the size of their network play a part in when you're looking to hire them, and how much does it, if it does?
It depends what you categorize as network. Is it LinkedIn connections? Is it the previous experience in that sector? Because like I have almost 14,000 connections on LinkedIn, and like maybe 10% of them I would actually be able to reach out to and say, hey, this position and such. So it depends on what network actually is.
Yeah, I'd be similar to what you're saying. I just question, how many hires do we actually make directly from our networks?
Yeah.
You know, and we're in leadership roles now, so it's slightly different. But you know, I'm not sure how many hires we make as a business each year directly from our recruiters' networks. You know, we go out and we find people for a specific role. You know, whether that's through HackerJob, Hired, LinkedIn, you know, or through advertising, you know, on Otter, you know, other places. I think what someone has, if they have a network, is they've got an understanding of that market or that particular, you know, talent sector or segment. But I think, yeah, just having, like you say, 14,000, you know, 40,000, 100,000 connections or access to a black book of contacts, I think only gets you so far.
Which, yeah, it is cool to know from you guys, because I know there's a lot of recruiters, you know, it's probably not seen as much, but there were a lot of recruiters that was like their badge of honor, how many connections on LinkedIn and whatever else. And I think that maybe recruiters maybe overplay that in terms of getting the role, right? That they think that, you know, I've got this huge army here of people that I know, and that's going to kind of want me into a job, but really it doesn't. So no, that's super cool. Okay, that's pretty much a lot of what I wanted to really discuss today. If I was to say to you guys, what is one tool, one business or someone to partner with that you would suggest using right now? What's the one tool that you guys rely on so much right now and would recommend? What would that be?
Well, for me, like did a whole lot of volume hiring involved, and I would say Zapier, Australian company based in the US and Ireland as well. AI technology, they saved us, I would say, like 2 full-time recruiters actually using that for volume hiring. Cut out all the bias as well. Amazing tool, fast, efficient, and actually relatively cheap compared to others in the business. So if I was to recommend one company, that would definitely be Zapier.
Awesome.
I think it's probably a bit harder for me to answer, because I've seen a variety of tools, and I've seen some work okay, I've seen some not work. You know, I was looking at our source of hire data just this week, and I can't get away from the fact that LinkedIn, you know, drives the most hires towards us. Otter is a really good platform, more of an advertising platform than a sourcing platform, and that's kind of been a really useful platform for us. I think one tool that I've just seen over the last couple of weeks that's quite interesting for me, and is one that I'm looking to explore next year, is called Real Links, which is a platform which helps to match employee networks with opportunities in your business. So it's a referral tool, and that's something I'm really keen to explore. So our referral as a source of hire is sitting at 18%, which is pretty good. But I think there's more we can do to proactively get people into their own networks, to get to get that up potentially to 25%, something like that, because it's very cost effective. So I think Real Links looks like a really interesting platform to help match networks with opportunities internally. Having just told you that networks aren't that important for recruiters, I'm now going contradicting that slightly and saying there's a platform which matches networks with opportunities. But yeah.
No, that's awesome. No, I really appreciate that, fellas. Couple of cool tools there for people to check out and hopefully use, because yeah, if it works for you guys, I'm sure it will for others.